And I think people are doing it because people know that Florida stands for freedom and that we will protect you. And right now, that means we're having to step up and fight back against Biden's mandates, which are unconstitutional. And so we're doing that on all fronts, but we're also saying in Florida, even apart from what Biden does, I don't care if you're a police officer, I don't care if you're a firefighter, I don't care if you just work for a private company, you shouldn't lose your job over these COVID vaccine mandates. We need to protect people. And if you think about it, we started off with 15 days to slow the spread, and now it's get 3 jabs or lose your job. I don't think so. So we have to stand up for people's ability to make their own decisions, and we shouldn't let people lose their jobs over this. And so we're going to make sure that we do that in this upcoming legislative session, which is happening, I think, not next week, but the week after, a special session that I called to make sure that we're able to protect folks. Also, just to be clear, in Florida, there will be no COVID vax mandates for school children. That is a decision for parents to make, and we'll support their ability to do that. So we're going to do, and we're going to have, and in the special session, we're going to make sure that this Parents' Bill of Rights has teeth, and that parents are able to make these decisions, including, like most of Florida has done, letting kids go to school without having to wear a mask for 8 hours a day. One of the things we're proud about is that we were right here when we did it. We signed legislation earlier this year with huge reforms for election integrity, and it was something that was very important. We did a number of things. We banned ballot harvesting in the state of Florida. We stopped unsolicited mass mail balloting in the state of Florida. We require voter ID for absentee ballot requests. And then probably most significantly, which didn't necessarily get as much attention at the time, now if you see Molly Hemingway has a book going over all this, how important it was for what we did in Florida, but we banned Zuckerbucks in the state of Florida. And if you think about what he did, he poured $420 million into these nonprofits. They'd go in and they'd effectively commandeer local election offices. They'd stack it with partisans, and they'd use it as electioneering machinery for their party and not for just doing the election. So that's a huge problem, and you can't let these tech moguls take over election offices. And so we've banned that in Florida, and it's not going to happen. So we're proud of that, but here's the thing that we were thinking about as we started to go through all the things that we've done and then all that we may need to do is, there'll be people, if you see someone ballot harvesting, what do? If you call into the election office, a lot of times they don't do anything. If you know that there's, in Florida, it's constitutionally mandated. Only citizens are allowed to vote in Florida, and yet you see examples of people, they'll even check they're not citizens, and they'll still be given ballots. And so what happens when you see that? You have voter rolls that are supposed to be clean, but not every county does the voter rolls. So what do you then do? So we are excited to be able to say for next legislative session, we're going to do another package of election integrity reforms that is going to make Florida number one by a long shot in anywhere in the country. So here's what we're going to do. First, we are going to create a separate office at the state level solely dedicated to investigating and prosecuting election crimes in the state of Florida. We'll have sworn law enforcement officers as part of this. We'll have investigators. We'll have the statewide prosecutor that's able to bring the cases. And so there's a issue that what will happen is if someone's ballot harvesting, you report it to these people, and this is their sole job. You know, some of these counties, it's not even, some of them will do the cases, but that's not their expertise. They got all these other crimes that they have to deal with. So by the time it happens, the election's already over. So it's not necessary, and some just don't want to deal with it at all. So now we have, they'll be specialists. They're going to understand what's legal, what's not legal. They're going to have the ability to investigate any crimes involving the election, and I think that's going to be something that's very, very important. We're also going to, because we've seen how they abuse ballot harvesting. Yeah, we banned ballot harvesting, but they only counted it as a misdemeanor. We're going to make sure ballot harvesting is a third-degree felony in the state of Florida. And, you know, if you look, there's actually, a lot of times people will talk about all these things with, like, the election rolls, and it's important in Florida because we have people that come and go all the time. You know, some states really have very stable populations. We have a very dynamic population. Now, we have more people moving in than move out, but nevertheless, that's just the reality of what we do. So you have to make sure that you're following the guidelines and the requirements of making sure the voting rolls are clean. You know, obviously, I think we all know, I know people who say, you know, hey, as someone told me, my father passed away 3 years ago, he still gets ballots sent to his house. And that's, you know, we don't want that. We don't want ballots going, you know, in California, they send ballots to everybody. So if you've ever lived in California, there's people that haven't lived there for 5 or 10 years, and they're getting ballots sent to them. And that's all because the voter rolls are not updated and the voter rolls are not accurate. So we have these requirements. The problem is there's no time limits on when they have to do it. So we're going to impose time frames where supervisors of election must clean their voting rolls by date certain. And then, obviously, with the banning of Zuckerbucks, what Zuckerbucks would do, they would take these drop boxes and they'd put them in all kinds of crazy locations. They weren't supervised or anything like that. So we did reforms in this bill last year that we were doing it, but I think that there needs to be more reforms on this. First of all, I don't even think we should have drop boxes, to be honest with you. But unfortunately, there's a lot of people in your legislature that thinks that it is. But at the end of the day, it has to be in places where they can be observed the whole time it's open. You have video and somebody in person. And then as soon as the day is over, 7 o'clock, it's got to be taken off. You can't just leave it there overnight. You can't just leave it. And you can't take in ballots after the election's over. Once the election's over, there's no more ballots. And so we're going to be doing these things. And so you're going to now be in a situation where if you see somebody brings a stack of ballots and they're stuffing them in a drop box, you have a place that will field these complaints and will immediately be able to investigate and hold them accountable. You know, in some of these places throughout the country, you'd see like one person would, like in Atlanta, they'd go to all the drop box locations, like they'd visit 30 drop boxes. You know, obviously, how many ballots are you doing with 30 drop boxes? So that is totally unacceptable. I mean, these are supposed to be secret ballots. You know, you're supposed to vote. When you go in, that's why they do it private. It's like a solemn thing to vote in person. But then you have these mail ballots, and somehow you can have someone have a stack of 50 ballots. That's just not right. So we're going to make sure that that doesn't happen in Florida. And I think if the legislature takes these steps, and there may be some other things that we do as we get into the session and get some other ideas, but I'm really excited about having actual ability to enforce. Because, you know, you can say what's legal or not legal, but if you don't enforce, and that's one of the things we ran into, you know, with this Parents' Bill of Rights. They didn't put teeth into it, And so you're saying it's parents' rights, but then we're having to litigate all this in court. And that's not what you want to do. You want to make it very clear what's not allowed, and then if there's violations, the people are held accountable. And I guarantee you this, the first person that gets caught, no one's going to want to do it again after that, because they know that there's going to be enforcement. So we're excited. We're excited about, in Florida, if you look around, in September, the U.S. created 194,000 jobs nationwide. Florida alone did 84,500 jobs. We have the lowest per capita tax burden in the United States. Our budget, some of you from New York, New York's budget is over twice the size of Florida's budget. Obviously, their taxes are a lot higher. But yet, who has better roads, and who has better infrastructure, and who has better education? We're Florida now. When I grew up in Florida, and back then, California and New York ranked higher than us in education. Well, now, for K-12 education, we're number 3 in the country by Education Week in their rankings for achievement. We also have the most school choice of anybody in the country, and we're doing more for vocational education than any other state in the country. And those are really good jobs, and that's going to help people. Our public university system's ranked number 1 in the United States 5 years in a row by U.S. News and World Report. We don't let them raise tuition, so you can actually afford to go and are able to do that. So we're really excited about a lot of the progress that we've been able to make, and I think I talked about those voter registration. I mean, people are voting with their feet. They're leaving failed states, and they're trying to come to a state that's going to be well managed and well governed. I can tell you, I talk to people all the time who flee, and they say it's the best decision they ever made, to come. I mean, that's just the reality. So, and I think when you saw what happened with, obviously the taxes, but the COVID lockdowns, people fled those, and they were fleeing the riots and the high crime in a lot of these places, because those places, they don't stand by law enforcement, they don't support the police. So the result is, in like San Francisco, they don't even prosecute a lot of these crimes. You can go and shoplift, and you won't even get arrested for shoplifting. They have to close a lot of the retail stores because they get looted every day. So CVS, Walgreens, Target, those types of stores, they just close. Well, that's creating a culture of law breaking, and people don't feel safe. Here, we're standing by law enforcement 100%. Last year, when people were defunding the police, we did $1,000 bonuses for all first responders in the state of Florida. And we see how they're treated in Seattle and in Minneapolis and in New York and all these places. So we're going to do, in this legislative session, we're going to enact $5,000 signing bonuses for all out-of-state law enforcement who relocate to Florida. And we may do the bonuses again as well, so stay tuned on that. We're going to work hard. But it makes a difference. One, you should do it because it's the right thing to do. I mean, I was just at a funeral in Hollywood for a Hollywood police officer who got killed by a scumbag. But I can tell you this, had he not interdicted this guy, that guy would have killed people in the community. I guarantee it. And so he wears the uniform, he puts himself on the line, and that's just what happens every day. So we need to make sure that we're supporting those folks. And I think our package, as soon as I announced that, I announced it at the Fraternal Order of Police National Convention, and people have been asking, like, hey, we want to come to, so we're going to have huge interest. We already have huge interest in that, and I think you're going to see even more, which we're excited about. And then we're going to make sure that we're following up. We're in litigation with big tech, because I actually believe that if you want a free society, you can't have a handful of companies in Silicon Valley control the speech that's allowed in this country. And that's what's happening right now. And they interfered in the election in 2020 by censoring things that they didn't want to be able to help Biden. And then they've done things with COVID to censor the truth about the Wuhan Institute of Virology, which we know was a big problem. And oh, by the way, Fauci funded Wuhan lab. He funded it. What I say, people, there's an old, because sometimes people will ask me, oh man, how come Florida, 84,000 jobs, the rest of the country, what could be done to help the rest of the country? And I say, well, the saying that I always think back, and it's a little bit of a flourish on how it's been used previously, but a recession is when your neighbor loses his job, a depression is when you lose yours, a recovery is when Dr. Fauci loses his. He's been wrong time and again. His policies have been very damaging to tens of millions of people. And we know what the NIH has been doing is cruelty to animals with what they're doing with these beagles and these puppies. I'm sorry, our tax dollars should not be going to that. And I think the whole lot of them need to be cleaned out, and we need to figure out what's going on. So we've got a lot to be able to accomplish going forward, but big tech, what they're doing is they are trying to impose an orthodoxy on this country. If you think like we do, they don't want you to be able to speak. And honestly, that wasn't how, when the tech started, they used to let people speak. Now they're trying to determine what is acceptable and what's not acceptable, and that's not going to work. And so what we actually said earlier this year, you should have the right, you should have the ability to stand up against big tech. If they censor you, you should be able to sue them if they're discriminating. And that's what we're working on. We've got an argument in the 11th Circuit, but I think what we're going to do next session is figure out any weaknesses that we see from the legal perspective, maybe make some tweaks, maybe add some strength in some places. But here's what I can tell you. To just say like, oh, they're just private companies, they can do whatever the hell they want. Trust me, they're going to run all over you if they're allowed to do it, and we can't let them do it. And we're also going to make sure that they're not able to steal your data and make all this money, which they've been doing for years and years. It should be your right to determine whether you want them to have your data, and you should have to opt in to whether you have their data. And if you don't opt in, they shouldn't be able to use your data. And so we're going to make sure we have strong data privacy in the state of Florida, and I think that that'll go a long way to making sure that folks' freedoms are respected. Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a lot of work ahead. Hopefully maybe we'll see some of you in Tallahassee for this special session to make sure that we need really strong protections for people's jobs. We need to make sure we're protecting parents' rights, and we got to make sure that we're standing strong when people want to see us. So that's what we're going to be doing. But in the meantime, just know we are going to. I know. Okay. Stop. That's. Thank you, Casey. I want to thank you on behalf of our First Lady. Thank you for the prayers. Thank you for the support. It's not an easy thing to deal with, but I can tell you she's really, really strong, and she's going to be back better than ever. That's going to happen. So the final thing I'll just say is, if you look at all the things that are going on, and you see big tech, you see corporate media, although they weren't very happy with Virginia last night, if you were watching some of that. That was some major coping going on. If you look at that, if you look at what's going on with some of the big corporations with their woke agenda, when you look at the Brandon administration in terms of what they're doing. I don't even know, like, do you know how that started? Like, it was, and like, you know, you have the media, they're hand-wringing over this, but, you know, it was at a NASCAR race, and they're doing an interview with the driver, I guess his name was Brandon, and the crowd starts chanting very colorful language about Joe Biden. And it was obvious that they were doing, and, you know, it is what it is. First of all, they said way worse about Trump for 4 years. We know that. But so they're chanting this, and so you have a reporter from NBC who knows that's what they're saying, and she's trying to cover for Biden. So she says, yeah, they're chanting, let's go, Brandon. And that was a lie. And it was a lie, and so this chant, I think, has taken on a life of its own because it exposes the dishonesty of these corporate reporters and what they do every day to try to lie. And so now you see it. But bottom line is we've got a lot of things that we're facing. We've now seen after Virginia, people are willing to fight back, and you know I'm willing to fight back, and we are fighting. And so what we need now more than ever with all the stuff that's going on is we need people to stand for the right things, but they need to stand up and they need to display courage and backbone and not back down in the face of all the things that we have to deal with. And so that's what we're looking to do. Churchill used to talk about when they were facing the appeasement in Britain, when you had Nazi Germany. He told the story because no one was willing to stand up. And he said, when I was a kid, I remember when the circus would come to town, and my Nana told me, there's one thing that you can't see because it's too grotesque for human eyes. It's an exhibit called the Boneless Wonder. And Churchill said, they asked me now, where is this boneless wonder? And he's like, it's no longer in the circus. It's in the front row of the House of Commons because these people don't have a spine and they're not willing to stand up. We don't have time for boneless wonders right now. We need people who are going to stand up, hold the line, not back down. I'm doing that. We're doing a lot. But I've only begun to fight in the state of Florida. Thank you, guys. God bless. Thank you.
Let me give you my number, because I'm also running for the Florida Commissioner.